All right, well, thanks for joining everyone. My name is Pierre Harry, and I'm a technical sales consultant here with AVEVA Select California. And for this 30-minute or so webinar, I'll be discussing our Connect platform. And specifically, I'll be focusing on Connect data services and Connect visualization services. So if you aren't familiar with any of this terminology, please don't worry, because I'll be clarifying what all of this means throughout the webinar. Okay, so what are we going to be covering today? Well, we're going to start by spending 10 or 15 minutes or so on this PowerPoint, where I'll be introducing the concept of Connect and describing the different types of services that are available on Connect. And then we will deep dive into Connect data services and Connect visualization services specifically, because those are the two sort of focal points of this webinar. And after that, we'll follow up with a few use cases to really drive through the value proposition of these services. After which I will show you guys a demo of Connect and a demo of these two services. And finally, we will open the floor to a Q&A. And, I'm trying my best to target 30 minutes here for the whole webinar, but if we go a little bit over, that's totally okay. We can keep talking as long as there's questions. And so if you do have questions, please feel free to ask them in the chat as we go along, and I will get to them at the end. And also, if you have to drop early for whatever reason, or for some reason we don't get to your questions, don't worry, because we are following up this webinar with a coffee talk at the same time next week, which will be hosted by my coworker Alcanza. And during this coffee talk, it's going to be an opportunity for you guys to ask us any questions related to our cloud products. So we can answer your Connect questions then as well. All right, so let's get right into it. And before we talk about what Connect actually is, I wanted to mention that, above all else, right, Connect is a solution. It's a solution to an industrial operational problem. And so before we start talking about the solution itself, I wanted to touch on the problem that it solves. So what is one of the biggest problems that we're seeing in industrial operations today? Well, the problem is that the industry is rapidly evolving and expanding at a very rapid pace. As the industry grows and we adopt new technologies, more and more data gets created. In fact, 50% of all industrial data was created in the last 2 years, which is pretty mind-blowing, to be honest with you. And this will continue to be true, and it will increase exponentially in the future, especially as we're starting to adopt cloud technologies. And it's actually projected that 38% of all new operational data is going to be stored and processed in the cloud this year. So this is all very exciting and bodes well to the health and future of our industry, right? But we do need an effective way of harnessing this large volume of data. Otherwise, the data is just junk, really. And the unfortunate reality is that, a large majority of data that's collected by enterprises goes underutilized. People just aren't using this data. So companies have access to a lot of data, which is great, but they just don't understand. They just don't know how to understand it, right? Or how to use it properly. So the challenge is, how do we turn this junk data into useful data? So that's where Connect comes in. That's AVEVA's solution to this problem. So let's get to the bottom of it. What is Connect? Well, Connect is our cloud industrial intelligence platform. So it's a single source of industrial operational truth for our customers. It brings together hundreds of applications and data sources into one centralized view. So it makes it easier for you guys, our customers, to get a clear view of your business in one central location. So that way, it enables you guys to make decisions in real time based on the data that is being stored in Connect. And that's because we have several services that are at your disposal through Connect. And these services enable you to get the most value out of your operational data. So you're transforming your junk data into actionable data. So while Connect will continue to evolve, because AVEVA is actively investing a ton of time and resources into it, because we know that it's the way of the future, But Connect currently has 5 types of platform services that are available today. And that's the 5 white tiles that you see in the middle here of this diagram. So it starts with the first one, service and usage management. And so this is the core service that's available within Connect that enables our customers to basically monitor their credit budgets, manage their consumption and manage their user permissions. That's essentially the admin side of things here. And then number 2, we have data services, which was previously known as AVEVA Data Hub. And that's for aggregating, storing, contextualizing, sharing, manipulating all the industrial data from across the ecosystem. So that's the data store. And I'll talk about this more later in this presentation because that's the focus of the workshop. And then the third tile is visualization services. And that's for creating dashboards from the data that's being shared to Connect. I'll also talk about this in more detail later. And then we also have modeling and analytics services, which was previously known as AVEVA Advanced Analytics. And this is a tool that maximizes your data because it uses AI and machine learning models to generate real-time insights that are prescriptive, to give you basically insights and prescriptive actions based on your data. And last but not least, we have application development services, which allow our technology partners and developers to build essentially custom third-party integration solutions through Connect. So what AVEVA did here, right, essentially, is build an industrial cloud ecosystem, and that's Connect. And through this Connect ecosystem, we're enabling our network of customers, partners, and vendors to collaborate in one single environment that is essentially frictionless and user-friendly. Okay, so I won't spend a lot of time here, but I did want to remind you guys that there's many different application types that are available on Connect, besides the ones that we'll be focusing on today. At the end of the day, you can think of Connect as the services hub for all the AVEVA cloud products. So all of our cloud components in our portfolio are managed and accessed through Connect. So this makes Connect a full library of AVEVA products and partner applications as well. I also briefly wanted to touch on the administration side of things here, because in addition to having access to the full portfolio of AVEVA cloud software on Connect, the platform also lets you administer and access those services. So it's also a centralized location for user management and permissions to those services. And in addition, on the platform, you can also manage your budgets. So Connect offers reports on your flex credit consumption, your usage, your adoption, and it gives you audit logs that you can use as well. And we can actually see an example of an account usage report in the middle of this slide here. So that's all available on Connect. So again, I'm not spending a ton of time on this because I do want to focus this webinar on Connect data services and visualization services specifically, but I did want to mention this in passing to kind of drive the point home that, in this webinar, we're really only examining a subset of the services that are available on Connect. And Connect as a whole is really so much more than what we are talking about today. All right, so let's deep dive a little bit into Connect Data Services, which was previously known as AVEVA Data Hub. And we're going to start with this because this is really the backbone of your Connect data infrastructure. So what is it exactly? Well, Connect Data Services is literally the data repository layer of Connect. So it's your cloud data store. You can aggregate data into the cloud from many different data sources, AVEVA or otherwise. And we can see those data sources on the left side of this diagram here. We have several categories of industrial data sets that are shown here. And so these include remote industrial IoT type sensors. So that's the remote assets category on the top left. We also have support for the various AVEVA apps, such as AVEVA Historian, AVEVA InTouch, AVEVA Pi, and the Edge data stores. But you can also bring in data from third-party data sources if you need to as well. Because Connect, at the end of the day, it's a neutral platform for all kinds of industrial data, not just AVEVA data. So the platform, it's really built to handle any kind of industrial sequential data, no matter where it comes from. And once your data is shared to the Connect point, you can execute the data services that you see in the middle here, which include at the base level, storing and viewing that data over time, right, in basic trends. But you can also further manipulate the data. And so you can contextualize it, and you can merge it with other data, merge it with metadata information, whatever makes sense. You can also shape the data and essentially format it for external consumption. And so this is particularly useful for external tools like BI tools and data science applications, as we can see on the top right of this diagram here. Because with the shaping feature, you can basically structure the data so that it can be automatically digested by those third-party platforms without needing any sort of advanced data science techniques, because Connect Data Services will do all the work for you. And you can also share the data securely across tenants using what we call communities. So that way you give access to the data to whoever you choose, whether that's users within your organization or outside your organization. And as we can see on the middle right side and the bottom right side of this diagram, this allows you to incorporate a variety of different data consumers in your audience. And the important thing to remember is that you have the ability to curate this entire process at every level of detail. So each of those services that you see in the middle, you have full control over how you curate that. So that starts from the choice of which data streams from which data sources you choose to share with Connect in the first place, to which users within your organization have the ability to manipulate and shape that data with the methods we discussed. And of course, all the way to having control over which users, internal or external, can view and access that data. And so this network of users can include your own trusted partners, such as equipment manufacturers, application developers, or analytics providers, or whoever else may need secure cloud access to your data. And as I'm sure you guys are very aware, the traditional data sharing process to those third parties can be a difficult thing to manage. So Connect adds a huge amount of value here by allowing you to do it securely through the cloud in a streamlined and efficient manner. Okay, so now that we talked about Connect data services, let's, which, as we said, to kind of summarize, right, it's the data repository and management backbone of your Connect ecosystem. So that's the base layer of your Connect environment. So now that we talked about that, let's talk a little bit about the visualization component of that data, which is visualization services. Because it's one thing to have the data in the cloud the way you want it, right, in the format and the structure that you want, but it's another thing entirely to be able to digest it and to be able to use it properly. So what is Connect Visualization Services? Well, it's essentially the self-service enterprise visualization component of Connect. So it's the layer that sits on top of data services that lets you create dashboards so you can visualize your data in the most meaningful format and in the desired context. And the workflow is really easy because you can directly tap into the data that you have stored in data services and use a really convenient, easy to use point and click environment, which I'll show later in this webinar. So anyone can do it. All you need to do is really search for specific data streams and then select the type of content that you want to create, which can include industrial graphics. You can use line charts, column charts, data grids, pie charts, etc. There's a lot of different options here. And once you've created those contents with the streams that you want, you can aggregate them onto dashboards and then choose the time frame of the data that you want displayed on those dashboards. And then you can also choose who you want to give access privileges to in those specific dashboards. And at that point, since Connect is a cloud product and this tool is browser-based, your dashboards, they're going to be viewable on any device that has a web browser. And the application, it's going to conform to the space of that device, whether it's a desktop machine, a tablet, or a phone. And so this will all make sense when I get to the demo portion of this webinar, because I'm going to demonstrate to you guys how to create a dashboard from scratch. So we'll see that in a little bit here. Okay, so we went over the basics of Connect data services, and Connect visualization services. So we talked about the what. And to wrap up this presentation, I want to talk about the why. Why use Connect and its services? Well, there's actually many reasons to use Connect, but I'll talk about a few of them here. And one of the primary use cases is that Connect solves a common data siloing problem, and it allows for data aggregation, when normally that's a very painful process. So for example, you might have an enterprise with multiple different plants on different sites. And so with Connect, you can aggregate the data from these different sites into the cloud, and then you can organize it and you can structure it in a single place on Connect, and then visualize the combined data in a dashboard format. Or you can choose to share the aggregated data to third-party tools like Power BI or Tableau. And the way you do this is with the in-house data shaping mechanism earlier. And as a result, operational reporting, it becomes a breeze with Connect, because visualization services, it acts as essentially a enterprise visualization tool, because you can create these dashboards and drill down on the data sets of specific plants, and report on equipment performance, downtimes, OEE, alarms, etc., all from the cloud across all of your sites. And so to build on that, another strong use case for Connect is simply data sharing. Because now that you have all of this data in the cloud, now you can choose who you share it to. Connect uses what we call communities, and you can see the communities on the right side in the diagram there. And what communities are is they're essentially private groups. So you can curate the data sharing to specific people. What I mean by that is, for each community that you create, you can choose which data streams you choose to share with it and which dashboards. And whoever you invite to that community will have access to only the data and the dashboards that you choose to share with that community. So this is extremely useful if you have, external stakeholders that you may want to share data with. So for example, the diagram shows some examples of that. That could be customers, that could be equipment vendors, equipment suppliers, etc. It could also be, regulatory agencies that need an effective way to report on your operations. So those are just examples of, external entities that you might need to let consume your data. And with the communities feature, you're essentially giving them a streamlined and effective way of doing this, because all they need to do is log into their Connect portal on a web browser from anywhere, right? As long as they have an internet connection. And they can view only what you choose to share with them through the communities. And so as the Connect admin, you have full control over that data sharing and external data transfer. And this is extremely useful, again, because without a cloud tool like Connect, sharing this kind of data to specific external consumers, that can be, pretty laborious or cumbersome, or even worse, it can be unsecure. Okay, so now that we've talked about Connect with this presentation and Connect data services and visualization services, I'm going to jump into the demo of this webinar to kind of illustrate the concepts that we talked about here. So give me a second while I get oriented here with all my screens. And I'm going to share my screen once again. All right, so what I'm sharing here is my web browser. Kyle, do you mind confirming that you can see the Connect homepage here?
Yep, I can see it.
All right, awesome. So what I'm showing you guys here is the Connect landing page essentially. So what I did is I went to connect.aveva.com and I logged in to my account. And again, as a reminder, this is a cloud product. And so all you need is a web browser with an internet connection to access it. So I'm accessing this from my desktop machine, but any desktop machine with an internet connection or any tablet or any phone will be able to do the same. And that's the beauty of Connect and leveraging cloud technologies like it. So this is the admin page. I'll give you guys a quick overview. This is where you can perform administrative tasks for Connect. So this is where you can manage your essentially the system for subscribing to specific services and organizing these services in whatever logical grouping makes sense for you. And so I have a folder for Data Hub and visualization services, which is what we're going to look at in a second here. You can also manage users, roles, and groups to manage who has specific user permissions. We have integrations capabilities where you can generate access tokens to give external API access to your Connect data. You can also get an overview of your Flex credits and manage their consumptions, and then view reports on account usage, resource usage, credit transaction reports, etc. And there's also an audit functionality as well. So again, I'm kind of breezing through this because that's not the focus of this webinar. And last but not least, I also want to show you guys that you have access to the full services catalog that you can see here. And so again, Connect is so much more than Connect data services and visualization services. We have a whole list of cloud services that are available here in this catalog that you can see. So you can subscribe to these if you have the right license entitlements and you paid for it. Okay, so without further ado, let's jump into the demo of Connect Data Services, which is here labeled as Data Hub because that's the old name for it. They're used synonymously, AVEVA Data Hub and Connect Data Services, but I do expect this to be relabeled pretty soon to Data Services. So I'm subscribed to this service, I've paid for it, so I can go ahead and access it by just clicking on this tile. And so I'm going to click on it, and that's going to launch Connect Data Services. Okay, so now we're on the landing page for Connect Data Services. And on the landing page, you have some useful quick links here, such as quick links to the documentation, as well as news feed on the latest developments. And then this is also really useful. It shows you your resource usage. So it shows you information on how many streams, how many data streams are being shared to the cloud, how many you're accessing on a daily basis, and how many you're sharing to your trusted partners. And it can also get a snapshot into your overall system health. And if you're using any Pi to Data Hub agents, you can view them here as well. So we'll start with the data management and take a look at our sequential data store here. And the sequential data store is essentially where you can view and manage your data. And so here we can see my full list of data streams that are being shared to Connect. And they're all labeled with their names, their IDs, and what types they are. And so I could add streams if I wanted to and kind of manipulate the stream of tags that are being shared to Connect. If I had communities, which I don't in my case, this is where I could create them. So I could add a community and then basically manipulate the administrators and the members. Way I can choose which data streams to share to that community so that community only has access to the data that I'm choosing to share with them. Now we'll take a look at data collection because there's three broad types of data collection mechanisms within Connect. We have edge data stores and adapters. In my case, I don't have any set up, but if you had any third-party connections, this is where you would configure them because we have adapters for Modbus TCP, MQTT, OPC UA, and so these give you third-party data source integration capabilities, right? If you have an OPC UA server from a third-party data source, we could use the AVEVA adapter for OPC UA and connect to it and then stream the data from that third-party data source into Connect Data Services via OPC UA server if we want to. And the second category is Pi to Data Hub agents, which I am using because I have a Pi server that I'm sharing data to Connect by using this agent. And so I can kind of take a look at it here in more detail. I'm not going to really spend a ton of time on this, but here I could view and edit the data transfer from that Pi server. And let's give it a second to load. But if you do share data to the cloud from a Pi server. You can do it via browsing AF elements directly. And so here I'm actually browsing the asset framework, and I'm bringing in these 6 assets, pump 1 through 6, and all the associated metadata and attributes associated with them. But I could also point to direct explicit Pi points if I wanted to. And that's the list of Pi points that I am sharing with Connect from the Pi server directly. So again, if you're using a Pi server as a data source, you could use the asset framework and bring in the assets directly, or you can do explicit Pi points in the data archive. Both are supported, and I have a mix here in my own environment. And the third category is OMF connections. OMF stands for Open Message Format, and that's just another type of file format that's used to bring in data into Data Hub. And if you're using the AVEVA Historian as a data source, the AVEVA Historian does use OMF, so it will show up on this list. And so I do have an AVEVA Historian as well that is feeding my Connect environment here. And that is managed through the System Management Console, which is now called the OCMC, Operations Control Management Console. So if you have a historian, that's where you can configure your historian. And inside of there, you can create a replication server and choose Connect Visualization Services as the target for that data sharing. And at that point, it will show up here on this list because data is being streamed from the AVEVA Historian to Connect Visualization Services. Okay, so we also have, if we look at visualization, we also have some basic trending. I'm not going to spend too much time on this because at really good trending, you want to use visualization services, which we're going to look at next. But you can do basic trending inside of Connect Data Services here, inside of Data Hub. But this is really just to kind of, confirm that data is being streamed correctly to Data Hub. And so we can see I have some example tags that I am, that I'm viewing here in real time. I can change the time frame to last 2 days, last 30 days if I wanted to. I have control over the time frame of the data that I'm trending. But again, this is really meant to kind of verify the health of your data streams and confirm that data is being streamed. And you can also do it from an asset perspective if you wanted to. So if you remember, I do have 6 pumps, 6 assets that I'm connecting to from the Pi server. So I can view each of those pumps from an asset browsing perspective and view all the metadata that is associated with each of those pumps. So again, we have the maintenance date, manufacturer, etc. This is all metadata that's configured inside of the Pi server, inside of the asset framework that I am streaming into Connect Data Services along with the tag data. So it's not just the tag data and the attribute data, it's all of the associated metadata as well to paint a complete picture of your assets. And that pretty much, oh yeah, let's just do one more thing. We'll take a look at the analytics here, the data views. So I talked about being able to shape the data for external consumption. And so here's where you would do it. So let's go ahead and create a data view. We'll call it test, for example. And what we're going to do is we're going to search for a specific stream. Let's go ahead and do temperature. And we're going to select, for example, bearing temperature. We're going to save it. And then as we save this data field, we can choose which metadata, which columns to include in it, right? So for example, if I want to create a data view with only the engineering units and the ID, I can click apply. And we can see a snapshot into the data view here with the timestamp and just the name as well as the engineering units and the ID because I only selected those 2 items. So that's the only 2 columns that are going to show up in this data view. And at that point, I could save it. And what that does is it shapes that data. So only those 2 columns are associated with this data view. And at that point, I can stream that information only to a third-party external consumer like Microsoft Power BI or Tableau, right? And you'll see it has all of the shape information as well as the API URL all outlined and created here for you. And so this makes it really useful to stream that data externally in a way that makes sense for that external consumption without needing to use any advanced data science techniques or anything. You can do it all out of the box with Connect Data Services. Okay, so we're running up on time here, so let me go ahead and jump into Connect visualization services. We'll spend a few minutes here just to kind of develop a dashboard to show you guys how easy it is to create. So I showed you guys the Connect data services or Data Hub, which is the data repository layer, right? Which I showed you guys all the features for it, which are features like, the data views, so you can structure that data. You can manipulate the data sources, manipulate how you share that data, etc. So now we have all that data the way we want it in the format we want it inside of Connect. So now we can use Connect visualization services to create dashboards and content based on that data. And so I have an example dashboard created here on the home page that I'm going to navigate to show you guys an example. Here's an example of a pump dashboard that has 3 different pieces of content. So we have a suction pressure data grid that shows the average, minimum, and maximum over each hour over the course of the day. We also have a line chart that shows the varying temperature over time, as well as a bar graph that shows the current draw of the pump. So this is an existing dashboard. I'm going to show you guys how easy it is to create new dashboards. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to do the create new content. And so what we're going to do is we're going to select a line chart, and we are going to create a new line chart. We're going to choose our tags. And so here we can use the tag search to search through the data streams inside of Connect Data Services. So that list that I showed you guys earlier in Connect Data Services, I can now browse in here, right? So I can view all of that tag data in here and choose the ones I want. So let's go ahead and do current draw, for example. We're going to select pump 1 current draw. We're going to add the tag, and that is going to plot that current draw tag in a line chart. And so I can go ahead and save that. Let's go ahead and do line chart 1. And I can choose who to make it visible to. So again, you have full control over who gets to see these dashboards. In my case, I'm just going to do me just to, just as an example here. We're going to save it. And then we're going to create a dashboard. So now I'm going to do create dashboard. And I'm going to choose my existing line chart. And we're going to plot it here. And then because this is a dashboard, I can aggregate multiple pieces of content onto this dashboard. I am going to create another content and then add it in here. So let's just do a data grid, for example. And we will do the same thing. Search for the tags. Let's do calculated efficiency. And we're going to create this data grid. And there you go. That's how easy it is to create a dashboard. And I can, drag and drop the different pieces of content on the dashboard to reorganize it the way it makes sense. And I can also manipulate the time frame on the bottom, because now that I have the dashboard, I can choose the time frame of the data that I want to see on the dashboard. So I could do the last hour worth of data, 12 hours data, a custom time frame, for example, this week, and you'll see the dashboard is going to update based on my selection. And so if you've used AVEVA Insight in the past, this may look familiar, and that's because it is. It's a very, very similar interface and workflow to Insight. So if you've used Insight, it will look familiar and be really easy for you to pick up. And even if you don't use Insight, as you can see with my demonstration here, easy to use interface that really anyone can pick up in a couple minutes and start creating dashboards with. All right, so on that note, I am going to wrap up the demo and open up the floor to any questions that you guys may have. So let me stop the share for a second and take a look at the Q&A, because we're a little bit over time. So I am going to spend a few minutes here to make sure everyone's questions get answered. So yeah, so I guess before we do this, that's the end of the core of the webinar. So for everyone that joined, that's planning on dropping off, thanks for joining. This webinar was recorded, and so we will send this out, and we will also upload it to our YouTube channel as well. All right, so on that note, let me go ahead and take a look at the questions. We have one open question here. How does AVEVA Insight differ from Connect Data Services? That's a great question. So Again, they look very familiar, especially the Connect visualization services portion, right, that we just looked at, the dashboarding feature. The way they differ is really in the data sources. That's the core difference, because AVEVA Insight is built for really mainly AVEVA Historian, right? So you typically only stream data to Insight from the AVEVA Historian. But with Connect data services and Connect visualization services, it's much more than just the historian. It casts a broader net, right? So that's going to be, you can bring in other data sources like AVEVA Pi, which I showed you guys. You can bring in data from IoT sensors using the adapters, third-party data sources like OPC UA servers, for example. There's just a lot more different data streams that are available for Connect data services than AVEVA Insight. And on top of that, AVEVA Insight doesn't really have the same data services that Connect Data Services has. So what I mean by that is with Insight, you're really just streaming your raw historian data, and that's it. You're not really doing anything with that data besides visualizing it. But with Connect Data Services, you can also structure that data. You can shape it. You can combine it, right? Like we saw, you can shape it with the data views for external consumption. You can basically do a whole lot more with that data to manipulate it in a format that makes sense than Insight does. But in terms of comparisons, both products are available through the cloud. They're both browser-based tools. So outside of that, they have a lot of similarities as well. So hopefully that answers your question. And if that didn't answer your question, or if you had a follow-up question, I'm not sure who asked this. It says anonymous attendee. Feel free to type in another question if you have it here, and I'll answer it.
Oh, it looks like someone sent a question privately in the chat here. Can I only bring in data from AVEVA historians?
No. And that's a great question. And that's really one of the strengths of Connect Data Services. It's much more than just historian data. Historian data is just one part of it. You can bring in data from the AVEVA historian, but other AVEVA apps too, like I said, like AVEVA Pi. You can bring in data from AVEVA InTouch as well. But there's also third-party data sources, right, via the adapters. So you can use data from OPC UA servers. You can share data to the cloud via MQTT. There's an adapter for MQTT. There's DNP3. There's Modbus TCP. There's a bunch of different avenues for collecting data from third-party data sources besides just AVEVA data sources. So that's a very important consideration, right? Connect Data Services is built for really any sort of industrial sequential data streams, no matter where it comes from.
Awesome. We got another Q&A question here. How is Connect different from AVEVA Pi?
How is Connect different from AVEVA Pi? Well, so I'll start by saying if you purchase Pi through us, Connect will come with it as part of what we call Pi Data Infrastructure, which is the commercial package that we sell for Pi. So they're different, and they're both products that are used together. So you can think of Connect as the cloud component that sits on top of your Pi server. So Connect won't replace Pi. You'll still have your on-premise Pi server that'll function, as it's traditionally meant to function, right? As a single point of truth for your on-prem data. But then you can use that on-prem data in the Pi server to share to the cloud as an optional cloud component that sits on top of that to give you access to all of the Connect services that we talked about. So they're really meant to work in conjunction with each other. And with our commercial model that we sell called Pi Data Infrastructure, you get both at the same time. So you can use both together. So Jennifer, hopefully that answered your question. If it didn't, please feel free to post a follow-up question.
Awesome.
The bottom line, just to kind of summarize, right? Connect is a cloud product, while AVEVA Pi is an on-prem product, and they're meant to be used together. Connect won't replace Pi. No problem.
All right, we'll give another minute or so just in case anyone has any last minute questions before we close things out here.
Yeah, and again, guys, we're happy to answer any questions if you have them after this. Like I said, my coworker Alcanza will be hosting a coffee talk next week at the same time, um, which will be 30 minutes, just like this. And that's really just going to be an open forum, opportunity for you guys to ask us any questions about our cloud products. And so, of course, that includes Connect. So if you do come up with any questions in the next week or so, feel free to join and you can ask during that session next week, and I will be there as well. So we're happy to spend as much time as you guys need to discuss the details and intricacies of the platform. And
Yeah, I'll even go ahead and drop a link to sign up for that coffee talk in case anyone's interested.
also, we're also happy to answer questions over email. So let me send my email in the chat too. Yeah, we're here to help. So by no means is this your only opportunity to ask questions about Connect. We're happy to help support any questions you guys have moving forward.
All right, looks like we've run out of questions. So thank you, Pierre, and thank you to everyone who attended. Like Pierre said, we will be sending out this recording to everyone who attended. So we just like to thank you all for attending and wish you all a great day.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining. I appreciate your attention here, and I will speak to you soon.